Ready graphics? Ready theme? Cue graphics.
Good evening. For your information tonight.
Hi, I'm Jesse Mullins.
And I'm Lauren Milberger.
And this is FYI.
The Murphy Brown Podcast.
Get it, Jim. I mean, don't. Respect Doris, but get it, Jim.
That's nice. Jim, do you know anything about bestiality?
It's a dark internet, people. Don't look that up.
And on today's episode,
We'll be talking about Season 1, Episode 14. It's how you play the game.
hello, troops.
Hello, troops. I can't say hello to people with a normal voice. It's not possible.
It's okay. We'll kick all that out of you.
Yeah, it's someday. Someday my spirit will be beaten out of me.
So welcome to the show.
Hi, guys.
On that note, we have some Murphy Brown news.
We do.
Yes, what's the
Exciting
news?
So we have final casting news that there is a Phyllis coming to town in Murphy Brown, but it's not the one you're thinking of.
It's another Phyllis.
Phil's World. So this is Phyllis, Phil's sister, not his wife who you've met previously, played by,
Someone named Tyne Daly.
you may have heard of her once, or 17 times.
Particularly because they're rebooting Cagney and Lacey on CBS as opposed to reviving it.
Yes.
So obviously she needed to get on CBS in some way.
You got to get back there.
Gotta get back.
somehow. No, Tyne Daly is an amazing, highly lauded legend within stage and screen.
Yes.
And you have definitely seen her in many things. I'm trying to think about what the first thing I saw Tyne Daly in.
For me, even though I'd always heard of Cagney and Lacey and knew of it, for me it was Judging Amy.
I was going to say, I think it was Judging Amy, and I was trying to decide if that aged me, but that's what I think of her from.
Yeah, she has 6 Emmys and a Tony.
Just a couple.
And she's in the American Theater Hall of Fame.
Yes, because she's amazing.
She's amazing. I've seen her on stage several times. She's one of my favorite actresses.
She is stunning on stage. I'm one of those people that when she enters, she doesn't need a line. She doesn't even need a big costume. You just feel when she enters the stage. She pulls focus in the most subtle and dynamic way possible, and I love her.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about her in the future, but we just wanted to give you guys some news. And her name being Phyllis, Diane promises us via Twitter that it will all be explained.
Yes, we're excited. We were
Yeah.
talking about. I was saying, we know that the trope of men marry their mothers, women marry their fathers. I feel like, what was Phil's mom's name? I feel like this might be the crux of it. If Phil has a sister named Phyllis, and he married a Phyllis, is there perhaps a mother thing going on?
They're all named Phil.
Exactly. But was her name Philippa? Pippa for short? Or is it just Phil's and Phyllis's for how many generations? I need to know. How many and did this determine who he dated? I need to know.
So Phyllis is my grandmother's name.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Although it's not technically the name that she was born with, but
Oh.
it is the name on her tombstone.
Whoa, hey, what?
There's a story.
Please tell.
Now I feel like I have to tell
Yes,
it.
you do.
So my grandmother was born Evelyn Phyllis.
Middle name.
Yes.
Okay.
No one ever called her Evelyn. In fact, she hated the name Evelyn. I think it's a beautiful name.
It's a lovely name.
I think she hated it because it wasn't her name. No one called her that. But my guess is because in the Jewish religion, most people are named after someone who's passed. So they probably needed an E name, but wanted to really name her Phyllis. So she had her name legally changed to Phyllis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for her. She knows what she wanted.
But the interesting thing as well is that now my family has 2 letters to choose from when naming children. So my cousin named her daughter Emma.
Oh. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I love that tradition. I forget that it exists, but it's quite lovely.
I do. I like it because it's a way of paying tribute, but also letting a person be their own person and not have to walk in the footsteps of someone else who had your name.
Yes.
Although technically I am the second Lauren Milberger.
Wow. How dare you?
I know.
How is the weight of that second title?
I've technically had the name longer than she had.
Ooh. Mic dropped.
She married quite young. It was my father's first cousin. So by the time I was born, she was no longer Lauren Milberger.
All right, well.
But I call her number 1 and she calls me number 2.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
Mad respect for that.
Thank you.
Mad
I
respect.
find it hilarious.
So shall we get into the episode?
Let's go into the episode. It's How You Play the Game is written by Russ Woody, who, just to give you context, previously wrote Nowhere to Run, which is episode 3, and Kyle, episode 10. It is directed by Barnett Kellman.
Oh.
And it aired February 27th, 1989. The song in our lovely traditional beginning is Do You Love Me? Although some people refer to it as Do You Love Me, parentheses, Now That I Can Dance. But the song is actually Do You Love Me? And the album that it's from is Do You Love Me, parentheses, Now That I Can Dance.
Interesting.
So that's confusing.
yes.
It was a 1962 hit single recorded by the Contours on the Gordy label. And one of my favorite stories so far that we've heard, they only recorded the song because Berry Gordy found them in the hallway.
It's truth is always stranger than fiction.
Yeah, I mean, as we've sort of learned so far, is that they got these songs out pretty quickly.
Yeah, they just made it happen.
So the Temptations had left the building, unbeknownst to
Physically, not metaphorically. Like physically,
they physically had left the building, not knowing that Gordy was looking for them, and so you couldn't call him up on your cell phone and be like, "Hey,
No.
Temps, get back here."
Yep, nope.
So he ran into the Contours, who were very worried that they were going to lose their contract because they did not have any hits, and thanked him profusely for it.
Aw.
And I kind of love that.
I mean, it's just too bad for the Temptations that just killed their career and they went nowhere after that.
Yes, which happened to the Contours.
What a-
unfortunately.
oh.
Yeah. Now, it was a top 40 hit. It has a distinction being in the top 40 in 1962 and in 1988. Jesse, do you know why?
Dirty Dancing.
Yes.
Yes.
I know. When it dawned on me too, I went, "Oh, of
I was
course."
trying to imagine why I knew that song so well, and it's totally from Dirty
That's
Dancing.
why I know it too. I feel like
Yeah.
it's the first sort of Motown song that I knew.
I hear that song and I start seeing that sequence. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
It technically was on the sequel of the soundtrack sequel,
Mm-hmm.
More Dirty Dancing.
Oh, the clever naming of the 80s.
I owned them both.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. And I had a poster on my wall.
It's cool. I still sing Cool Rider from Grease too. It's fine. No judgments.
My mother made me a Pink Ladies jacket, and I lip synced 2 songs from Grease 2.
Yeah. Let's
I
do it
love-
for our country. Let us.
We have way too much in common.
So much in But anyway, about
Anyway.
the Contours.
Instrumentals by.
The Funk Brothers.
So, into the episode.
Into-
This song, Do You Love Me? Just so perfect. It's a great choice. And I feel like this opening is, to me, is quintessential Murphy Brown. And I know we've sort of had it a little bit before, but the way that it's like cut really quickly and it goes
Yes.
with the music, I feel like this is sort of what eventually became sort of the staple of the openings. You know, when you didn't have a little vignette happening.
Yes. Yeah, it's not the opening with Jim getting his coffee ready. It's not Murphy trying to get a cigarette. It's a montage before the action actually starts. Question, why do you think this song is playing over it?
Because they want to be loved.
Yeah. I was wondering, that's what I had thought, but I was trying to see if you thought there's any other reason.
I mean, I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts? I feel
That
like
was my
it's,
first. It
it's
was like,
about,
do you love me? Do you love me?
You're-
Now that I can dance, I assume the dance is they're doing this dance.
Yeah, and then I can do the mashed potato. I can do all these things. Like, I can do this. I can do that. Love me, love me, love me, love me. Let me just,
Just
show you
because we're
everything.
high quality doesn't mean we can't be the quantity you're looking for.
Well, I don't know if this is all high quality stuff.
No, just because they're already high quality doesn't mean, like, the people at FYI
Oh, were
being
you,
like, just because we're high quality doesn't mean we can't be the quantity.
oh,
that
you've
you
moved
want.
on already.
Of course I have.
Yes, okay.
I am in the metaphor right now.
So we open with the first shot of Morton Downey Jr.,
Morton.
which I'll get into after this, at least at the beginning, the template for Jerry Gold.
Yes. I can't hear the name Morton without assuming First Wives Club Marty.
Oh,
Which, oddly enough, watching this sequence, I'm like, huh.
and he has a silver bowl, which you can see in the background, which I'll talk about later, which was very famous because he would use it to ash out his cigarettes. He chain smoked through the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Then we have the National Tattler.
The Tatler.
So here's the thing. Just notice this now because we have to write everything down. I thought it was a made-up magazine for Murphy Brown. In fact, it's actually in the Hannibal Lecter universe.
No, it's a real magazine
Yes.
from the UK.
But when you Google it, it's under fictional newspapers
Interesting.
on a fictional wiki. So you
Interesting.
obviously know more about this than I do. I thought it was made up for Murphy Brown.
Oh, no. I thought based on the name of it, when I first ever heard of it, at whatever point in my life I'd heard of it, I thought the name was just so on the nose. There's no way it could have been real. But yeah, it's gossip trash.
Yeah, and I also realized they call it the Tattler as opposed to the National Tattler on the show. But,
Yeah.
But even when I Googled it, I could not find a lot except for pictures.
I listen to a lot of British podcasts and they talk about the Tatler.
Yeah, it's so it's just like the National Enquirer, right? You know? Yeah.
They're very into the comings and goings of society.
So I'm pregnant with Satan's baby. David Frost, The Informer.
I just want to say that I Googled claims of Satan impregnation.
Oh, did you?
It's a dark internet, people. Don't look that up. It's a dark, dark world we live in.
So you watched your internet history, I'm
Sure
assuming.
did, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
good. No one will know.
Nope.
So we have The Informer cover that says Marilyn Monroe alive.
Mm-hmm.
Times Square, and I'm guessing the late 60s, early 70s?
Yeah, they seem to be throwing back from memory.
A fire. And I thought, oh, why couldn't it have been a garbage fire?
That makes so much sense. That is... Can you go back and yell at production?
I don't know. I mean, I guess garbage fire is more of a modern, I mean, not modern, but like people use it a lot more now. In terms
Well, I also
of,
wonder
like,
if they were doing that time period, if you did a garbage fire, if it would imply like burning draft cards and that kind of stuff.
Oh, maybe.
Different.
That's true.
A different implication.
A few scenes of hospitals, Hare Krishnas.
Oh, Hare Krishnas, man.
A punk scene? Is it a punk scene? Like late 70s punk?
Yeah, it looks... I mean, it's supposed to be rough and scandalous.
Yeah.
Which would make sense for 70 punk.
Morton Downey screaming with a noose, which you were saying.
That image is iconic to me. And my family didn't watch his syndication, but I grew up knowing that guy. And I think because I was slightly afraid of men yelling in general. And he always seemed very intense and intimidating to me. But I also knew that a lot of people saw him as a joke. So I was just fascinated. But that particular, the noose, for some reason, really resonated with me. I remember seeing that.
A woman bodybuilder. World Secrets headline Chimp's head on a human body. David Frost again.
Wait, apparently is a thing.
Yeah. Morton Downey smoking a cigarette. He was, as I said, known for chain smoking on the show, blowing smoke in people's faces.
I appreciate that throughout this opening sequence, every clip is like he's disintegrating mentally. And he's getting more aggressive
Oh, that's interesting.
and breaking down.
You're right. Yeah, I didn't think of the breakdown, but he's definitely getting more aggressive.
Yeah.
So then after that, we have an ambulance. I'm assuming like ambulance chaser, right? That kind of thing. The Enforcer cover, girl gives birth to own brother, which could be incest, or the baby was still inside you because it's a twin that never...
I went to incest.
Okay.
My brain went to incest. Sorry.
Morton and his audience members are on their knees. They're praying, I think, over a corpse or a guy in a... I don't know.
I wasn't. I was wondering if it was maybe like a hardcore like revival church service or something.
Maybe. It
like
looked
that.
like it was audience members.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Because here's the thing. People would come to his show, a lot of the male audience, a lot of young male audience, and they would scream. They would scream his name, and they would just go berserk. They would go crazy.
loved him.
They would have Q&As, and people would come up and get in arguments with him, and that was his thing. He would just scream in your face. And fights broke out. Big fights.
So the thing that he is making me think of is Alex Jones.
Me too, funny enough.
And I'm trying to imagine what it would be like if Alex Jones had an actual audience. And if it would be stuff like that. Because now it's in, like, his show in particular, his joke of a show in particular, is very tunnel visioned and in its own little bubble. And ratings aren't the same, which is something we'll talk about in this episode. Ratings aren't the same, so we can't really fully measure how popular he really is, aside from the fact that he keeps getting money to continue his show. But I'd be very interested to see what a group of people actually actively on set with him would be like. And if he has the kind of pull that Morton did.
Well, there's a documentary about Morton Downey that I was not able to watch, but I watched interviews on CNN with people because it was a CNN documentary. And they speculated, not about Alex Jones, but about certain things that Alex Jones, the milieu of Alex Jones,
Yes.
would be conspiracies. They thought that Morton Downey would be a birther.
People who create an on-screen character who use that kind of shtick as their attention-grabbing move. And when I first saw these clips, I was like, oh, that's so old school. And then I realized, no,
He started it.
it is. Yeah, he started it, but it's not gone, man.
No, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But quickly, then we have, after the audience, I wrote tons of T and A. Well, mostly A.
Oh, you were way more clever about that. I wrote so many butts. That's what I wrote.
You sounded like the cocktail waitress when you said that.
So many butts.
And then we have Tattletale, human blob eats a farm a week.
That I think might have been my favorite one.
So to give us some context, and I have to say I knew a little bit about this subject, and I know a lot more, and it's scary and interesting at the same time.
Okay.
So many people say that Morton Downey Jr. is the the king of trash TV, the starter of trash TV and a lot of reality television that we have today. He started in 1987 in Syracuse, New Jersey on a cable station. So he was actually a local station because I remember my dad watching it.
So many interesting icons come from your world.
Thanks, Jersey.
Across the board. Hey, at least you created the spectrum.
I don't think he's actually from Jersey, though. He also was a lobbyist beforehand. He lost a lot of jobs for screaming at people. It's a big shocker.
I am shocked by this.
His debut episode was titled Women in Porn.
Wow.
The show quickly became a hit, and by 1988, with his live audience who would yell his name. And if everyone remembers, when we saw clips of Jerry's show, they yell Jerry's name.
Yep.
Also interesting in the background that really makes me think that he's mostly based on Morton Downey. I'm sure there's other things in there. And eventually, eventually Jerry changed. Not necessarily, him, but the idea of what is being said. So I'm really talking about, in the context of this episode, what was being looked at.
Yes, absolutely.
Because something that I think Steve also mentioned was Jay being a radio personality, that Jerry had maybe some qualities of Howard Stern in him. I think eventually Jerry became more like a Bill Maher type character.
The term that first came to me that I was just looking up while you were talking was saying that Morton was the first one. I tried to look up specifically shock jock because that is usually a radio personality, but I do find it interesting the mix of the radio personality and that history with Morton Downey Jr. because that Jerry does feel like a perfect blend of the two.
Yeah. And then in the background, when we see Jerry's set, it has sort of this diagonal thatching, and it reminds me of the squares, which is horizontally. And again, this was always what I thought that he was originally based on. Finding more about Morton Downey, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see the evolution of Jerry when Jay came in and sort of, changed the role a tiny bit.
And give him a heart.
Yeah. Well, that too. But in Jerry's first episode, he's chain smoking all the time. He blows smoke in... Well, he kisses Corky, but he blows smoke in people's faces if you think about it. So it's definitely,
Morton Downey Jr.
very much influenced by that. And Morton Downey is filled in most of this opening. He was quickly dubbed Mort the Mouth, and he pretty much, people said, rode sort of a wave of public rage. He considered himself an advocate, oddly enough.
It's interesting he says advocate. Advocates make it about... I get what he's saying is like he's making it about other people, but he's a voice. He thinks he's a voice of the people. I'm not sure that I would give him the concept of an advocate. That means he's campaigning for something. He's just embodying something that he
he's
believes
just
is
angry.
out there.
And a conservative, which we have to say, which is very important to his persona. It was known to be shocking. He had a lot of public people on, politicians. There were lots of fights because of the screaming and the anger and
Yeah, that would create fighting. I can see that.
But what I thought was interesting was, so it started syndicating nationally in 1988, right? By September 1989, the show was pretty much gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So this episode aired in February, right? Whereas by September, he was gone.
That is an incredibly short and loud presence.
I was shocked. I didn't realize that it was... Jerry Gold lasted longer than Morton Downey Jr.
Maybe it's because I'm not from the coast, and so the syndication got to us later.
Yeah.
But I thought he was around longer.
But the biggest issue apparently was that Arsenio Hall, funny enough.
Oh.
I mean, I think that he burnt himself out probably because it's hard to say because nowadays this is a lot of what's in our entertainment that people are not getting sick of, but they did get a little sick of. Advertisers were also very wary of him because of all of his antics. So the show was not doing well. They moved the time slot. Arsenio was just, was before him, and the audience was sort of going into Arsenio, even though it's different, but it's just sort of the time slot thing. But really put the nail in the coffin of his show, which was already very close to being canceled, was to save the show, he pretended that he was attacked by neo-Nazis in a bathroom at an airport.
He pretended?
Yes, because he got caught, because the swastika that he drew on his forehead was backwards.
People are so stupid.
If no one is getting it, it's because he did it in the mirror.
Slow clap for Morty.
Yeah. So something sort of interesting around this time as well is that you had other talk shows. You obviously you had Donahue, which was going to be a reference. Murphy does a little Donahue body gesture, which cracked me the hell up when I realized what it was. But I had remembered Donahue not being this outrageous and profane and for the first 9 years of Donahue, he won like every Emmy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what a lot of people feel is that people took what Phil Donahue was doing and then, whereas Phil felt that there was a line, other people didn't. His show sort of went off the air because people kept going farther and farther and he wouldn't go there. Now, I also remember as a kid, I don't know about you, that there was also Donahue up against Oprah.
Yeah.
You know, and I was trying to find it because I wasn't sure if my memory was wrong, that I was like, I remember Oprah doing this kind of stuff, you know, cross-dressers and housewives who...
Before she was Oprah.
Oprah, yes. And then I found in one video, and it was fascinating. Oprah said that there was a moment on the show that made her realize she needed to change what she was doing and she would never do this kind of television again. She had someone on, and they already told him in advance that he was going to come on the show and say that he was having an affair. His wife would be on the show and the mistress. What they didn't know was that the mistress was pregnant.
Oh. And
Oprah said the look on this woman's face is just sort of betrayal when they not only said that he was cheating on her, but that this is so horrible, that the mistress was pregnant, and then the mistress goes,
Wow.
And it was sort of a beautiful moment, I feel, in this video.
A realization.
And for someone to admit, she realized that she needed to not do that, and she became more successful than any of them.
Did I tell you my sister was on Oprah once?
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, she was on an Improving Your Quality of Life segment when I think I was about 12. And she looked amazing, and she even made a joke with Oprah on the episode. And at some point in her montage, there's a picture of me when I was a little kid with my sister. And I'm just so proud of her.
Aww. So there's also a really interesting video. C-SPAN did this panel, and it was Morton Downey, and it was Geraldo. Geraldo's definitely a part of this, and there's going to be a Geraldo reference at the end of the episode, which we'll talk about. Phil Donahue, Larry King. I mean, it's a huge table. One woman, of course. Something that Donahue said was, "I do not apologize for wanting to draw a crowd. I am as interested in ratings as the people in this room are interested in circulation." There were a lot of newspaper people in the room. And that was a very interesting quote to what we have. He also said, "I also believe there is an unbecoming elitism here within our own journalistic community." And so it's a whole sort of argument about how they don't think that he's a legitimate journalist and he believes he is. And I think that's part of the conversation as well.
I think that's something very universal because I think it happens in every industry.
Sure.
Within their own spectrum. But we talk about that as actors. As about what's a legitimate job. What's the stuff that you talk about? What stuff are like, oh, they just do this. They don't count. The concept of legitimacy is a very relative strife per industry. And I think it's interesting what people within its own industry see as legitimate and what people outside of it see. What we see as audience members or readers or consumers see as legitimate within their industry versus what they consider legitimate.
Yeah, right.
And even just, they talk about at the end of the episode, how do you measure success?
Yeah. Something also interesting was Donahue, which started in 1972, was targeted at women who think.
Wow, okay. Unlike the rest of us.
No. And I thought I'd give you guys also some examples of topics from some of these shows. Because you also have Jerry Springer, you had Geraldo, like I mentioned, Sally Jesse Raphael, Jenny Jones came in, Maury Povich, who's still on TV today.
Maury.
Yeah. I know eventually Diane said that Jerry and Murphy kind of reminded her of Maury Povich and Connie Chung. She was like, what do they talk about at night? So I picked out some of my favorites. Morton Downey Jr.'s most famous episode is known as Strippers for God. Geraldo has Men in Lace Panties and the Women Who Love Them. Jerry Springer, we have A Cross-Dresser Wants My Gal. I'm sure there's more to talk about, but that's a little context before we go into the actual episode.
So we open on the FYI bullpen, and our first vision is of lovely Secretary Number 14, and he's not feeling so lovely.
No, even as a ginger, not so lovely.
He's a lovely ginger man. We found out it's his first IMDb credit.
Yeah, I was so excited.
And he's killing it. So he is surrounded by cold meds and Kleenexes, and just upon one visual, before you even see him trying to breathe, you know exactly what the problem's going to be with this guy. So Murphy enters and sees him. And we've seen this outfit or just pieces before?
This is Murphy's pony.
This is Murphy's pony. Okay, I didn't want to say that, but it felt like it's
I'm pretty sure
that outfit we love.
Green jacket.
Those gloves.
Oh, the gloves.
Those gloves. So he hands her message, which is that Walter Cronkite called, and he loved. She did a piece on the show the night before, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's we know it's a Thursday because
Yes.
show night's Wednesday.
Yes. Okay. So he loved her piece. She did one on the greenhouse effect, and she keeps quoting the fact that he says, "quote He enjoyed it immensely," and as before she turns to go tell Frank, the secretary does this noise from his head cavity.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It sounds like an angsty pig. And he's just trying to breathe. And I feel personally victimized by this moment because that feels like half of my life. Murphy is very excited to tell Frank, but Frank ignores her because they apparently are waiting for the Nielsen ratings.
Yes. By the way, my family was a Blue Book Nielsen family for I'm not sure how long, but a very short amount of time. I was so excited. I think it was 1991, actually.
Wow.
It's very topical for this. And
Can you explain what that is?
I will. So if first of all, if you're not familiar with the Nielsen's, which we'll talk about a little bit later about ratings, but since the 1920s and eventually the 1950s with television, they also did radio. They tally viewership. And back then, it was either through a box that you had, and you were a Nielsen family, and you were one of the important people that told us what we were all watching, or they would do samplings where they would send these blue books like you were in English class, and you'd have one by each of your TV. And I honestly, I should have asked my mother, and I forget how long we had them, but I was so excited. I would cut out the ratings from Entertainment Weekly. And I have them in my scrapbook, but as I'm cleaning out my old room, I found a wad of them all taped together. And I thought, what is this? And I realized that I would cut it out every week, paste it on my wall, and then put another one over it.
It makes sense now why you were a TV kid. Mm-hmm. Also, I appreciate that it appears that New Jersey is the center of all things now, because you get your blue books and all that good stuff.
We probably had it for like a month. Like it was a very
Yes.
short amount of time.
I mean, the reason why people aren't as familiar with this is that ratings are completely different
Yeah.
beast now because people don't watch things when they air
Yeah.
like they used to, because now we have binging, we have the Hulu, we have all these things where you can watch it after the fact around your schedule.
Yeah, and Nielsen is still sort of catching up with that. I found an article from 2016 which talks about a man who got a blue book in the mail. And he had to make a note to say, you have nothing on here about how much I watch Netflix. Mm-hmm. This is something that you should be tallying.
It's a new world of viewership and people need to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, what they have now is they have something called Live, Live SD, and Live Plus 3, and Live Plus 7. And Live Plus 3 and Live Plus 7 is DVR. Mm-hmm. Is, I believe, even streaming a little bit, which is how many days pass. So Live Plus 3 is 3 days past it aired. Yeah,
within 3
7,
days.
Since it aired.
I mean, as somebody who has not had a TV package for many years, it shocks me, especially considering my demographic, that they wouldn't be tracking other means. Mm-hmm. It needs to catch it.
Yeah.
So anyway, Murphy is immediately all eye rolls once this is brought up. She hates ratings. She hates that it's such a big thing, that you're measuring your success by the numbers, how many million people are watching, as opposed to the quality of the pieces that are going up.
Yeah, I love what she says. She says, is it more important to the work if you get 18 million viewers or 40 million viewers?
Mm-hmm. Shouldn't the work be the same?
Exactly, yeah.
And Corky comes up, and she's, of course, inquiring about if they know about the ratings yet. And Frank says, apparently Miles is 6 minutes late.
Yeah.
Apparently it's become this big of a deal,
Yeah.
which is the first time we've seen this.
But I love what Corky says.
She calls him a little turtle.
No, not even that. That's really great. And I thought she
I'm
was
sorry.
going
I just love it.
I thought she might have said, I was thinking she was going to say little pisher. And so she said
Yeah.
turtle. And I went, oh, not what I
little
thought,
turtle.
Corky. No, she goes, I hate coming in second.
Yeah. She wants the good ratings, and she hates coming in second, which, if you all remember the history of Corky, she inherited the title.
That's why that line is fantastic.
It's so brilliant.
It's so great. And it's only if you've really been paying
And
attention.
if you look at Faith, she knows what she's saying, and so there is such a simmering investment for Corky in this.
This episode is one of the episodes that Faith Ford submitted for her Emmy nomination.
Amazing.
As well as Joe Ragabudo, which we'll get to probably why in
Yes.
a little bit later.
So Murphy starts talking about how ratings shouldn't matter. It's the quality of the work. She says she's been here 16 years in the business, which that doesn't seem to track with our timeline, correct?
I thought about this because I made a note of that also. It just means that working for CBS was her first professional job in broadcasting.
Got it. So it doesn't count the other stuff.
Yeah, because she says if she was hired 16 years ago and she's been in the business 16 years ago, that means that this is just her first job.
Yeah,
she's
again, it
always
depends
worked-
on how you define business. The business.
That's true. I was thinking broadcast journalism.
Well, I think that's why when she said that, I was like, well, you've been doing this for way longer than you've been at CBS. Oh, I'm counting businesses. My first instinct was that the business was a larger term as a journalist.
That's true.
Because she's talking about the quality of journalism, but it makes sense if, I mean, this is the only element of journalism she has worked in where there have been ratings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's ever done print. There's never been any reference to that.
So anyway, I love Corky does this turn to Murphy and tells her she loves that she's such a professional. And then she says, if only I could get you to vary your hairstyle.
Which we talk about on the show.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny.
I concur with you, Corky.
yes, we agree.
Jim enters with a delightful, hello, troops. And Murphy thinks she can talk to him about Cronkite, but Jim only wants to know about the ratings. And she thinks that, and Murphy's fed up at this point, and she's saying they're just a meaningless bunch of numbers. And Jim seems to be on her side, and then all of a sudden turns and says, but why don't they like us in Denver? Are you going to talk about his little hand thing that he does?
The way that Charles Kimbrough says it, because he not only changes his voice, but he changes his body language.
He does this little fist
This sort
and
of-
then
yes,
gestures
sort of
to
hand-
Frank.
Yes, it's so great.
Oh, I love it. In that moment, as the final gesture we're talking about with Frank is kind of overshadowed by the fact that Miles enters, and he is clearly not having a good day. Murphy tries to bring out the Cronkite letter because Miles should care, and all anyone can talk about are the ratings. He says they took it in the shorts.
And you hadn't heard that term before?
No,
Taking it in the ass.
no, I know what the real term
okay.
is, but took it in the shorts is like it's like Corky saying that little turtle. Like I was like, oh,
A little Bart Simpson-y, too.
yeah, it is. And he says if the ratings get any lower, he'll be hosing down the produce at Food World.
Second reference to
Second Food World.
Yeah.
It turns out.
Oh,
that,
wait. Word usage. The last time we heard it was in an episode that Russ wrote.
Russ, do you love Food World? So Jerry Gold, first time we're hearing about him, and his headline news show. Jerry.
I always
took them
forget-
all in the ratings.
Sorry to interrupt. I always forget that is the name of the show because after this, they only refer to it as the Jerry Gold
Jerry
Show,
Gold
which
Show.
could be just shorthand sometimes, or they just forgot. But I was like, oh yeah, it had a title.
It was a thing.
Because headline news makes you think that it's a little bit of a news show as opposed to later on it does a little
Yeah,
more
going
like
through
more-
your
more
necessary
downing, yeah.
headlines.
But then again, Geraldo started as what many would see as a straight and narrow journalist.
All of the headlines with none of the substance. So some of those were, including the tragic plight of sex-crazed registered nurses. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Murphy gets that the ratings aren't great. Turns out, I forget what some of the numbers was, but the one that stuck out to me was that the demographic of 18 to 49 dropped off the page.
Yeah, which is interesting if people don't realize the reason that the 18 to 49, sort of bracket is a very important demo to advertisers is that there's this ridiculous myth at least I think it's ridiculous, in advertising that after the age of 49, you get stuck in your ways and you'll never try another product ever again.
I get where the assumption comes from, and it's still an assumption that lives to this day. Like, I'm stuck in my ways and I'm in my 30s, so like I have trouble trying new products. That's why I have a subscription for face cream.
But to go back to I think what you were also saying before is that so they got a 13 share and Jerry got a 40 share.
That is significantly more.
Yes.
So the thing about it is that Murphy's looking at this. When she sees that the 18 to 49 dropped off the page, she starts getting very upset.
I kind of love that. It also shows that she actually does pay attention.
She
because
gets what they mean.
Yeah, she gets what they mean. She also knows that they rose in this city and they fell in that. Like she knows them really well, and I love that sort of contrast that she is actually pretending.
I love it. It's the fact that she intelligently understands what they are and what they mean. She just doesn't want to have to care about them.
Yeah.
But she does. And then Corky is quite perplexed because she thought it wasn't about the ratings, and Murphy proceeds to says that it's about the quality, but she also wants to win. And Jim tries to helpfully insert that they did beat Mr. Belvedere.
Oh, I used to love Mr. Belvedere.
Belvedere.
Yeah.
Miles is I appreciate Miles in this episode because he really is pushing for integrity.
This is classic Miles.
Yes.
This is the Miles that I feel like I know.
Yes.
You know, and I understand the last episode he served a purpose.
course.
I get that, and I do agree. I think he was trying to be part of the boys club.
Yep.
But this is the Miles. He does
this
a lot.
is the one that's growing.
Jim. You know.
Jim.
Yeah.
Jim.
He has all of his sort of classic sort of little Miles tropes that
Yep.
he does.
And he says he hates it, that they work hard on their shows and they like the quality should be the one that's winning.
Yeah.
And Corky says this great line about how she wants to go door to door and say, America, I'm mad at you.
I feel like this is like classic Corky. Like if
Is.
you went to do a clip package, you know,
Yeah.
what is Corky?
I would pick a lot of stuff out of this episode.
Yeah.
Miles very begrudgingly offers that a network person has had a suggestion, to which Frank buries his face
Oh, I love the gesture.
in his hands and says that perhaps they could attempt to do stories that are more intellectually accessible to a broader spectrum of viewer.
I love that quote.
It's so politically correct. And Jim sums it up by saying, give him TNA. So now he'll just go ahead and anchor the news in a tank top and bicycle pants.
And I thought, Jesse would like that.
I'm pro Jim in a tank top and bicycle pants. Yes, Jim. Follow your dreams. Follow my dreams, Jim. Follow my dreams and wear those bicycle pants. And Frank makes the point. He's been working on a homeless piece for 2 weeks, and he says that he's supposed to. What do they want me to do now? Find the lighter side? Murphy says they won't do it. That they are not journalist prostitutes.
Oh, that line will come back to bite her in the butt.
Won't it though?
Yes. They can take their story and stick it in a file with Hello Larry and Pam Ewing's dream.
I love the fact that Miles, as a leader, you see this, he's swelling with pride, and he tells them, I'm so proud of all of you. And then says that he might ask if the ladies could do something about their wardrobe, maybe some off-the-shoulder peasant blouses. And Corky and Murphy, in unison, just kind of slowly turn their gaze to him. He's like, I'm just kidding.
I feel like Miles a lot of times puts these sort of jokes like this. He kind of means it, but he doesn't know what to say. Like he's kind of compensating a bit.
He sets all of his ideas up as a potential joke, but then if they work, then great.
Yeah.
So he always leaves the door open to get out of it if he needs to.
Because later on, he kind of puts it on thick when he's like, you know, I could get fired for this. And yeah. So just going back, because I feel like this is a very obscure reference now. Do you know what Hello Larry was?
No.
Can I tell you about Hello Larry?
Please tell me about Hello Larry.
So in the history of television, Hello Larry is a joke. And that's the only reason I know it.
Okay.
I have not seen scenes from it. Joanna Gleason was in it. It was a vehicle sitcom for McLean Stevenson after MASH.
Okay.
And so it had a lot of high expectations.
Sure.
And it failed miserably, although it had 2 seasons. And so it sort of became kind of a placeholder for this idea of something terrible.
So it's like Carrie the musical.
But something I did find out in my research about Hello Larry is that I always thought, and a lot of people do apparently, thought that it was a spin-off of Different Strokes because I watched Different Strokes all the freaking time. But it wasn't. To try to get better ratings for Hello Larry, they had the character come on Different Strokes and be a friend of Mr. Drummond.
No.
Yes.
Oh, that's A for effort.
Hey, they're trying. So, and then obviously Pam Ewing's dream is,
Yes.
the shower thing.
I did recognize it. Anyway,
Yeah. Back to not McLean Stevenson. Where
let's go
were
to
you?
Phil's.
Let's go to Phil's. So Murphy walks into Phil's. She's very sort of downtrodden. She says, with the old days, she'd order a double scotch on the rocks, but it's a kinder, gentler America. George Bush reference. So she'll have a club soda and sulk for a while.
Oh, been there, girl.
Yeah, she's worried about the ratings, and Phil's like, yeah, God, the Jerry Gold show is just terrible. And Murphy can't believe that he watched it, but he said, he doesn't no control of the TV. The bar patrons made him watch it. Talks about one of the nurses from the show. Thinks that she has to have her outfit specially made. I'm guessing because she's quite stacked. And then one of my favorite parts is he goes, he doesn't understand how a nurse like that can get an accurate heart rate. And then we see that Jim is eating, he's having a salad and a cup of coffee. I thought that was interesting, his choice
Yeah.
of meal for some reason.
I don't know if I ever considered what I thought Jim eats for lunch on a work day.
Didn't see him as a salad person, but he's on TV. I get it. You gotta
I guess
stay
I
slim.
saw him as like an accurately, evenly sliced sandwich that Doris makes him.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the same sandwich, like an egg salad sandwich that he has eaten every day
Yeah,
since
but they
they
eat
got
at
married.
Phil's all the time, though. They usually eat
He
hamburgers.
does.
They
He
usually eat
does.
hamburgers. I guess
Yeah.
that's why.
I
But
just can't see Jim eating a hamburger.
we'll have to pay attention and see.
So you
Jim-
know I'll watch Jim all day.
So Jim feels like roadkill. I love that image. And they just feel so beat up. And then Frank comes in dressed as a homeless person.
Yes.
Looking actually pretty nice, I have to say.
Frank looks good.
Good.
This is, again, we get to see Frank in the field.
Yes, in the field.
And it's fun.
I also had a thought. Not having the toupee, he can be undercover.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
I mean, he had a hat and everything,
Uh-huh.
but still, that's my new canon.
Yes. I think it fits into our established canon.
I think so.
Yeah.
And he's super sort of cheery, although it feels kind of like a forced cheery. Like, you know that something's probably a little bit wrong.
There's compensation there.
Yeah. And so he wants to, Murphy doesn't understand, they're just, how he can feel that way when the situation that they're in, particularly because he's doing something on the homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, do they want to hear something funny? And Jim, feels that he can sort of, hear a joke right now. And Frank says, who among them is capable of enduring more pain than anyone? And Murphy looks at Jim, and then she looks at Frank, and she says, Marilyn Quayle?
Ding.
And he means himself. He's been to Beirut. He's rode with, the Greenpeace, and he makes Ollie North look like a florist.
It's so specific.
So specific. And Murphy wants him to hurry up because he smells like fish. And then Frank gives this sort of beautiful monologue about meeting a lot of different homeless people, and particularly, focusing on this
Children.
Yeah, this father and this young girl, about 8 or so, that he meets.
When he tells the story, by the way, my visual of the father and daughter is Curly Sue.
Me too! Yes!
You got so excited. Lauren just got aggressively excited and then dragged her body as quickly as possible away from the mic so she didn't break your eardrums. I'm so excited that just happened.
It's so creepy,
I
Jessie.
love that movie. My dad and I loved that movie.
I didn't watch it a lot, but oh my God, my face is getting hot. That's hysterical. Okay, yes, so Curly Sue is
Curly
definitely
Sue,
who I
yeah,
saw.
yeah.
And they offer Frank to sleep in their trunk if he wants a warm place. And long story short, just watch the beautiful monologue in the episode.
I get why he submitted this.
Right? This little girl, I'm sorry, she's like 6 or 7. His last, couple of coins, because she feels that he might need it. And then, he goes, and the funny part is that no one's going to watch. They're all going to be watching. And I love the way Joe does it. He goes, Jerry Gold. Like this hatred, but also you get the impression that that's how he's introduced on the show.
Yep.
Like, it's very specific. And I love little things like that add in.
It is heartbreaking, the conversation that happens in this about what you do to get the meaningful story out there.
Yeah.
And what might be worth it and what might not. I appreciate that they come to what happens later with as close to altruistic intentions as they can, with this larger goal in mind. If we have this important story that we want people to hear and tell, and we want as many people to know about this as possible, how do we do that? Do we have to compromise in some way our values?
It reminded me of a lot of the storylines on Newsroom. Mm-hmm. It's very Sorkin-esque.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to get that across.
Yeah. So Jim and Murphy, they start to brainstorm. They want to help Frank. They want his story to get seen. Do they talk to the network? Here's one. Do they take out bigger newspaper ads? That doesn't happen anymore.
No, that's not how you do it.
And Murphy hates it. She wishes they could fight fire with fire. And Jim agrees, they shouldn't do this. They can't, and it's interesting. Like, I actually can't remember who says it first, because they sort of really bounce off each other really well. It's almost if they both come up with the idea together, even though I know they don't.
That's how I received it as an audience member.
But if they just did it once, if they only do it once, which they repeat a lot, and then Jim says, I heard about a woman in Detroit with 3 breasts. Jim has a thing with breasts.
Jim's a breast man.
Well, look, Doris.
Yep.
Yeah. I love the fact that we always find out what's underneath Jim. Jim is a very passionate man.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he's mentioned breasts a lot, if we can say that.
He's a boob man. He can't help it.
In season 2, he throws Doris to the ground at one point.
Yes, he
makes
does.
out with her.
Yes, he does, Jim. Get it.
I just think that this groundwork is being... Oh, and we have the line later, which is my favorite,
Yes.
which we're going to get to.
Yes.
So, Jim's got a lot going on underneath that facade. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, he does.
And then Murphy goes, let's get on it.
So we're back at the bullpen again.
Brown suit alert.
Jim, brown suit, living my best dreams. So Corky's been trying to find Murphy and Jim, and they arrive, and she says that she has been trying to find them, and they've been off watching Jerry Gold's latest episode. And they're clearly have been doing research.
Of course.
Jim refers to it as the most disgusting display of pseudo-journalism he's ever seen. And he thinks that we can outdo it.
It's a great little pause there.
I love he disses and he's like, and we can do better. And then they start talking about the ways that they can. Basically, the only one I wrote down was the devil worship in the Senate.
That's also the one that I wrote down.
It's so good. Because I want to know that story.
I think that we can just do this podcast independently. You do one episode, I do another. You're just going to say all the things that I'm going to say.
Fine. And it's just, I wrote down the one that stuck out to me. And Corky makes a comment about how she can't be a part of this. And you can tell she doesn't know if they're serious or not.
Yeah, she says, like, I thought you were kidding.
And she said she can't be a part of this if she as a Miss American. Like,
I was a former Miss America.
And that they would do this. Frank shows up. Frank's also been doing research. And he looked into the nurses.
Yeah, he waited for the credits.
Yep. Because he pretends his back has been giving him problems lately. And is it the phrase his back has been acting up lately?
Yeah, it's great.
Because it's the up that made me think about it. Because then Murphy turns with his expression and says, I don't think it's your back, Frank.
It's great. It's a subtle joke.
And that's why I remembered it, because the up.
And her delivery is great.
It's great.
And which then leads us into Jerry's next topic.
Which is is it about?
It's the truth about penile implants.
Okay, sorry everyone. I wrote penis question mark. And I couldn't remember if it was like a pump a la like Austin Powers.
I feel like all these episodes are just me laughing in the background.
Frank is talking about the nuns who mud wrestle.
Murphy lost them to Geraldo.
Ugh, you lose everything.
And now
to
my favorite part of this entire scene.
Please quote it.
Okay. Murphy suggests fetishes, leather, shoe, silk, flannel.
Jim, flannel.
The way that Charles Kimbrough, it's probably the funniest thing I've seen him do, and he's been hilarious on this show.
It's a true Midwestern man.
It just bubbles up
Leather,
inside of him.
Shoe, silk, flannel.
And then he...
The audience loses it.
They lose it. It is a huge laugh.
It's the best.
And then the way that he fills the laughter, which I think is funnier than the way he said flannel.
It's the way he's acting through the laughter. Just like...
It reminded me a bit, the best person I've ever seen fill the laughter is Megan Mullally.
Yes.
It's a master class of
Just
acting when she does it. She
swelling
the story. She
throughout it.
creates new
Yes.
stories. It's going on, and that works for Karen also too. That's
Yeah.
not really Jim, but the way he just sort of stumbles, and it's very Bill Nighy again.
Also,
It's
for anyone who
beautiful.
might not be aware, we're saying Bill Nighy, not Bill Nye, the science guy. Please note the last episode and this one, Bill Nighy. So also, I love Franken responding to this
He's a
scenario.
little disturbed.
He looks very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Miles comes in, and Miles has no idea that this has been getting cooked and cooked up. And so he comes in to give feedback on Frank's homeless piece, and he really thinks it could have an impact, and he is on their side. And then he starts doing the like self-flagellation about like, I could lose my job, but I will not pander to the public's thirst for sensationalism. Not now, not ever.
That's nice. Jim, do you know anything about bestiality?
It's the best. And Miles just looks so confused. So Frank suggests Confessions of an Undercover Cop, and Jim goes, I dress like a woman, and I like it. Murphy, he carried a pair of 38s and a gun.
She can't not laugh at herself.
It's so
I mean, it's not like she's laughing, but it works that she's proud of herself.
Yeah.
But it's she knows it's funny.
It's so funny. And Miles, much like Corky earlier, looks like he's trying to catch the joke.
Well, he's like, I thought pranking the new guy was over.
They explain that they are going, and this is one of my favorite lines.
It's a great line, too.
Knock Jerry Gold on his astronomical ego.
Yes.
Oh, it's such a good line. You watch Miles sit there, debating with integrity versus the numbers, and finally says, women who used to be men, who used to be women, with big breasts. And he puts his hands in front of what imaginary giant cans. It's so cute.
He's got a great look on his face.
He's
This
so
is a
proud.
really great Grant Shot episode.
It is.
He's bringing out all the, his fabulous comedic abilities. So then we go to the FYI set. It is show night. Jim introduces all the segments. Frank obviously has homelessness. Corky is doing an interview with Bert Parks. And then Jim Dial is saying the word flesh peddlers.
Oh,
Maybe a dream of mine.
it answered what was missing in my life.
Pretty much. So it's the topic or the segment is called Sex for Sale. And I didn't write down everything that Jim said. I just flesh peddlers.
It's the only part that matters.
Yeah. Murphy Brown takes a walk on the wild side. And it's set up to be sort of a discussion between the legalization of prostitution and against. So we have 3 women on each side.
Before we do, I just want to call out Corky's interview is with Bert Parks, who is the host of Miss America.
Oh, yes. We mentioned it before in a
Yes.
previous episode, so I
Yes.
didn't think to mention it, but we should
I just
in
love the
case.
fact that they're talking about she has do they call it a hard-hitting interview?
Probably.
It's something where they set it up like it's this really serious interview, and it's with the host of Miss America, which is clearly an easy call-in for her.
Yeah. So we have 3 housewives on one side and 3 prostitutes on the other, dressed like cartoon versions of 1980s
Of
prostitutes. So we have homemakers against gratuitous sex, aka hags.
We'll talk about this in a second.
Oh,
yeah.
no, you're right. And then on the other side, we have Hookers Organization for American Rights. Whore. This is brilliantly funny.
It is. Here's what's funny about it. They don't say hags and they don't say whore. What happens is that when Murphy introduces the 2 of them, she says the full name and then spells it, and you hear the most amazing delayed laughter as the audience realizes what they would be if you said them out loud.
And she kind of almost says later on, and then she goes, "Well, just stick it at that. Don't say it."
So this is one of those things where I think it's really great to point out that, for example, the word WHORE is not one that I am a large fan of.
I'm not a fan of as well.
But I strongly believe that nothing should be off the table in comedy. And this is a way that you play with that word and the implication of that word in a really clever way.
Yes. It's so bad, it's good. I also love that, first of all, Jesse starts talking a very sort of economically, very smart.
Me.
Sorry.
Not me, Jesse.
Jesse, Jesse, Jesse the prostitute, not Jesse the podcaster.
Yes. Jesse, the character in the episode.
Yes.
From HORA.
Is this crazy?
HOAR.
Is this crazy that because it was spelled different, I didn't even put those 2 together?
You said, I was like, it wasn't me, everyone.
Yes. Starts talking, very, very smart and sort of the what was behind it and how important and how it started.
She's incredibly articulate about
Very
the economics.
articulate. But then Murphy just wants to know how she became a hooker.
So I need to pause on that for a second.
Pausing.
So I am I've been recently informed in the last couple years of the necessity, and maybe it's because I partake of a lot of true crime, but the necessity to discuss the terms used within sex work. So it's a very multi-layered issue, but there is a very important and interesting conversation happening right now about the terms that we use. Terms like hookers, whores, prostitutes, these words that are often used as a way to dehumanize someone within the sex industry, the sex work industry. Regardless of your personal opinions, the huge divide at this point is voluntary or not. Sex trafficking, people who are coerced into these roles, that is a completely different conversation. The one we are talking about right now is voluntary sex work.
Women who choose.
Women who choose. And there's been a very large movement, especially in this I found very fascinating. Sex worker movements are highly active in countries like India, Argentina, Taiwan, and Sweden. And it's a conversation that's building within the U.S., but it's not highly prevalent. But the number one conversation piece right now is how we talk about the people who voluntarily work within these fields, particularly in crime, because there is a huge stigma about talking about someone with one of those terms immediately puts a blame on what happens to them in their life. And it's a high risk lifestyle. It's something where it happens more often because they are more apt to be in the line of fire of criminality. But something that I think is important is to start looking at how you phrase these terms when you're talking about people in these positions, instead of using terms that are usually derogatory and dehumanizing, looking at a way to remember that there's a person behind that, and the idea that we might look at a victim of criminality as less than or as an
object.
Yes, as an object or as a non-human, I think is the key. And I'm fascinated looking at this. I found a great post on MsMagazine.com. And for those of you who don't know, Ms. Magazine is an American liberal feminist magazine. It was co-founded by Gloria Steinem and Dorothy Pittman Hughes. It now has an online presence as well. And there's a very interesting article that I was reading about how to respect sex workers. And one of them is, the numbers are really, 1, don't diminish or mock sex workers agency, which is something that I think happens in this particular segment. 2, don't assume your problems with the sex industry are the industry's only problems. 3, use language with care. And 4 is to educate yourself and read more, which is something that I'm trying to do as well, so I can understand more of this part of the world that I don't really know. But it's something that I find interesting watching this episode now.
Well, it's funny listening to what you've said, which is really, really helpful and amazing. And I'm glad that you brought this topic because I didn't know you were going to talk about it until we just started. And I'm so happy. Is that at a very early age, I watched a lot of 80s movies on television. And so my introduction to sex workers is Trading Places. There are a lot of movies, and I can't think of other ones right now at the top of my head, where in the 70s or the 80s, it's just sort of dawned on me, wow, these images were probably very influential to me at a very early age, just like going back and watching the Anita Hill movie. I realized that even someone like myself, who I consider a feminist, had some preconceived notions about Anita Hill subconsciously.
Absolutely.
That I did not realize had been put in my head by the media as a young child. A lot of this is so important because it has led to the society that we have today.
Well, the idea that we have the Homemakers Against Gratuitous Sex and Hookers Organization for American Rights, the fact that it's homemakers versus hookers, the idea that one is wholesome, one is respected, and one is a subhuman
But also
who's going against that one's values.
But also some of the things that we're gonna, I mean, this is meant to be sensationalist, obviously. But and a parody of what was on television at the time. But I'm now going to get into some of these quotes that the housewives say that sound very, very to today.
Current.
And not necessarily in a comedic way as it was portrayed at the time.
Hey, I completely understand what this particular episode was doing. I completely understand, especially where this interview goes. And the fact that it was supposed to be a bit more of a caricature of what we were seeing on TV at the time. But that's not going to stop me from finding a reason to talk about the real life implications.
No, and that's why I love what we do here is because we get the chance to do that and have discussions that aren't just about television. Yeah. The housewives are concerned about the growing decay of moral values in America. We believe that America is the greatest country on the face of God's green earth. And we believe the American family is the backbone of this country's prosperity, piety, and strength. She's Midwestern, right?
Piety and strength.
And we love our children very much. I just felt like this is something that we hear today.
Yep.
Well, we can't give these people rights because blah, 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 and it's against the family. And, every week we go, this is still relevant. This is still relevant. But it is.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Particularly when one of the other wives says that she thinks that, people such as these women on the panel across from her, these prostitutes, should be punished and that should be locked up or shot. It reminded me of when Trump felt that women who have abortions should be punished.
Yes.
But the fact that shot gets a laugh, and today many politicians have said lines like this, not for a laugh.
Yep. Yeah, that was so...
Or preceded by a laugh, I should say.
Murphy's doing this great thing of lunging in with the microphone to get the two sides as it builds.
But my favorite part is the Donahue, which is the putting the mic out, going on her knee, and lowering her head to get out of the shot.
Yes.
I just lowered my head and messed up the mic. But it's... When I first realized that she was doing Donahue, I lost it.
It's good.
Yeah. One of the prostitutes is an actress who I realize I know as Alana Waterman on The West Wing.
That's how I know her.
Yeah, she was Toby's lawyer. But she's done so much stuff. I looked her up because she's one of those actresses that just has one of those faces that you've seen a lot. She has 221 credits on her IMDb.
So she works.
Yeah. Lee Garlington, she plays Shawnee. She's been in Sneakers and Field of Dreams. She's in one of my favorite episodes of Quantum Leap. Which is the episode right before Al and Sam trade places. It's called Shock Theater. She was recurring on Everwood. She was on Medium, Boston Legal. And I had forgotten that she was in this episode.
It's a really nice little pull.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, I know you.
The Housewives, we have Susan Krebs. She was also in The West Wing. The Nanny, Shameless. Anne Ryerson is actually in Troop Beverly Hills.
Which is awesome.
Yes. She's recurred on Curb Your Enthusiasm. She was in Caddyshack. And then we have Julie Payne, who was recurring as a teacher on The Wonder Years. Or actually, no, I don't even know. I just guessed that she was a teacher. Mrs.
Fulcinella?
And she was a recurring voice several times on the Tracy Ullman show. So these are, tried and true television veterans through most
And
of
it
this.
shows.
Anyway, so Murphy is egging them on the entire time. And she pretty much gets Rose the homemaker to run after one of the prostitutes and attack her. And a huge melee starts.
Oh gosh, it is chaos.
It is chaos. And then Miles tries to save Murphy by like pushing her up against the wall. And then one of the FYI fake sort of TV panels falls out. And then Murphy's trying to get back in the fray. And Miles is trying to stop her. Like, I'm not sure if she wants to join in and have fun or she wants to stop it because she's really trying to get in there.
And sweet Jim is just like trying to plow through.
He
And
feels he needs to stop the women from, doing this. And, Jim gets knocked in the nose with a microphone.
I appreciate the audible thunk that we get from the mic. You actually hear the mic.
And gets kneed in the groin, pretty sure. Oh, does he? Something interesting, though, is that, so first you see the picture that we get to, which is in the paper, television is, gone, which is, I know it's your scene, but I just want to point this out, is because there's a picture on the DVD similar to that picture, which is not similar to the last shot we seen because the prostitute that is in blue is nowhere near Jim. But the picture, I'm wondering, is a joke that maybe shouldn't have ended up on the, or it's just another version of it. But so here's what it is. Jim has his hand around the waist of the prostitute in the blue outfit. He's, how can I explain this? He is, his head is back because he's being hit in the nose with the mic. So it looks like he's having sex with the prostitute.
Yeah. Get it, Jim. I mean, don't respect Doris, but get it, Jim.
But it's interesting because in the newspaper, he does not have his hand around her waist and his head is back and his mouth is open. It looks extremely pornographic.
Looks extremely primal.
Hi, DVD.
Thank you, DVD.
I already have a problem with the DVD because there were season 5 pictures
and that
on
is,
the season 1 DVD.
That is indicative of a problem.
Yeah, so, someone just threw a bunch of pictures on the DVD, so that cracked me up.
Heyo. So we find ourselves in the FYI offices the next day, and Murphy comes off of the elevator, and she is in what I can only say is her attempt at incognito mode, or her new attempt, since we have seen her at the sperm clinic in incognito.
Yes, can I add on that?
Yes.
Because Corby sent us some scripts, and I was leafing through them, and I started cracking up because one of them is Ono Part 2. They refer to that outfit with the scarf and the detective raincoat as her Murphy tries to be invisible outfit. That was interesting when you said that. So it may be another version of her, but not sort of the traditional Murphy incognito outfit.
Murphy has shown up in what is a bomber jacket. She's clearly trying to just make her way into her office, and Carl catches her. Did I type this correctly? Last night made his blood run like lava.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's sexual or he's angry.
I don't know. And she doesn't want to have the conversation. He very sweetly is there to support her. And that if she needs him, she has his number.
We forgot about the breast thing. Miles says to put the camera in the previous scene on the prostitute's breasts, a.k.a. Alana Waterman. And Carl put the camera on Murphy's breasts.
Carl's is a one-track mind.
Yes, he does.
So Murphy gets into her office, turns the light on, and the chair turns. And there is Jim.
I love the way he turns around in that chair. It's so comedic.
It's amazing.
Slow.
And he has this massive tape and brace scenario on his nose.
It wasn't until the second time I watched the episode that I went, Geraldo.
Yes,
it's
that's
a
what I thought
Geraldo reference because Geraldo got his nose broken on an episode of his show.
And then had that giant structure for his broken nose.
He did.
And Murphy asks him if it looks as bad or if it hurts as bad as it looks. And he says that he deserves it because he feels cheap.
Oh.
That's like that phrase of you're small. Like for Jim to say it makes me feel cheap breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And she says, her too. Frank arrives to tell them, basically he's saying like he knows that they did it for him and for his
it's
story.
really sweet.
And when Miles walks in, he's gone from I would sacrifice my job and my life for all of this to his parents want money back for his education, and his mom is going back to her maiden name because he has ruined them with this broadcast.
And what we found out about his parents, that actually totally makes sense.
It totally makes sense. This is the part that I love. So Corky comes in. While Murphy is in this place of wanting to take this like integrity high road, Corky's the one who actually gets it.
Yeah, it's a told you so
And
speech.
It is. And Corky wins because she says she grew up on a farm and she was in Atlantic City in a hotel room one day, preparing to be the closest thing this country has to a queen.
Oh, Corky.
She's not wrong. She picks up I get what she means. She picks up a TV guide and reads an article about Murphy Brown and decides in that moment that's who she wants to be. Like, and you see why she was kind of fighting it the whole time. And then she says, it was either Murphy Brown or Victoria Principal. Painfully clear I made the wrong choice. And she storms out of the room and it's amazing. And then the call comes in about the ratings. And they're all sitting there and you hear Miles, and they do a great misdirect of Miles be like, okay. And then he says, and this city? Okay, and this one. And you see everyone wilting and this implication that it wasn't worth it. And Miles turns around and he says, bad news for Jerry Gold. And he says, we clobbered him. They won every market. They broke 47 share.
47 share.
Yes.
Quickly, a share is a percentage of the whole, but with an important difference from ratings point is that a show's rating is the percentage of all possible TV households or viewers in the country. A share is the percentage of households or viewers actually watching TV at the time.
That is huge. So that's
Huge.
yes. And he does the best line, which we were talking about earlier. He's like, Jim, my man. Have you ever seen a 40 share in your life? And it goes to Jim, and he looks at the paper and goes, whoa, mama.
You do this like side hug thing.
Oh, it's the best. And Murphy turns to Frank, and she's like, Frank, 50 million. 50 million people saw your piece.
12 million watched them last week.
Yes. Like the point that they, like this, they're all in this place of victory, that it was worth it, and that everyone saw that beautiful piece that he had created. And they go, we're number one. And it was easy. It was so easy. Frank turns around and he's like, oh, you have this Medicaid piece that's coming up. So they start throwing around ideas for what they can do to get people to watch that. And we have transsexual ballroom dancing, which is an awkward title now. But they said, real news slant, a cultural glitch in society, a change in Murray, a reflection of the societal evolution.
See, the subtitle, I went, okay, that's interesting, Frank.
That is, a cultural glitch in society is troublesome for me.
But a change in mores, a reflection of the society's evolution.
Yes.
That part I meant. I
yeah.
went, oh, that's a little forward thinking actually
It
for
is.
this time period.
And then they start realizing, no, it's okay. And Murphy's like, we're not selling out. Jim reasons that, if they only just do like one a week, it's fine. They're still doing their other good stuff. And Miles says, just enough to get people to watch our good stuff. And at that moment, they all universally go silent. You see them realizing that if you give in a little, you'll give in even more.
Yeah.
And Jim says that he's been in the business for 30 years and he's never had ratings like this before. I'm sorry, but it feels good. And I love that moment of humanity.
It's great.
And Miles says, well, this is success, right? People watching our show. And Murphy responds to that with watching it the way they slow down on the highway to see an accident, that's the difference. And Miles says, but we did what we set out to do. We got what we want, didn't we?
And then the show's over.
And that's the end of the episode. It gives me chills.
It doesn't even end with a laugh. That's
Nope.
super risky.
And there's nothing on the back of her door.
Yes, I noticed that.
That moment, everything is without humor, and it's the quiet ending.
Yeah, it's just quiet.
It gave me chills watching it.
I had forgotten it ended that way.
I completely did not remember that.
Yeah.
I was retroactively very proud of this episode.
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting conversation pieces as if you could do this now with that, but I think you still could because I think the commentary is still there.
Yeah, it's definitely still here.
People still talk about these things this way, and we still choose flash over substance often.
This is more prevalent today than it might have been back then.
It makes me think of clickbait culture. I was telling you this when we took a mini pause to look something up mid-episode, and I wanted to double check before I talked about the term sex worker versus prostitute or hooker or something like that. I wanted to make sure that the thing that I was quoting was from a legitimate news source, and that's something that I have had to learn online with clickbait culture that I was like, I need to make sure this is the correct publication that I'm talking
Well,
about.
Jordan Peele has that video out about, how to spot and how to double check. And that's a big thing for me, too, is if I see something, I look for it someplace else first. I try to find it in more legitimate sources before I repost it.
I try to post it from the legitimate sources.
That, too, yeah. If
I can get a New York Times, or often for me, if I can get a BBC post about it.
Well, yeah, BBC is always better. I learned that when I was in grad school, and I had a friend, still one of my greatest friends from Scotland, and he was like, "Your news doesn't show everything," and I was like, "What do you mean?" I was very naive.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Come watch this with me," and I was like, "Oh, this is very different." And
But it's something that we have to actively seek out. And it's
Yeah.
very easy, especially with the internet, especially with algorithms, beyond just what you're choosing to watch, what's being put in front of you because of algorithms.
yeah, I mean,
And I'd love to see this episode adapted for now.
we might see it.
We absolutely might, because I think that there's a lot to still talk about and new points. I'm very retroactively proud of the team for making this.
Yeah. And something interesting I forgot to mention that Corby mentioned to us, which I didn't realize, is that even though Jay is not in this episode as Jerry Gold, because enough of the character is talked about, Russ Woody technically through the WGA has credit for creating Jerry Gold.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, when Murphy and Jerry do have a relationship together, which is Jay's second episode, he wrote the first episode in their relationship and the last episode in their relationship in a way, which is very interesting. And next week, we will be talking with Russ himself.
We will.
About various topics, including some of his episodes. And we're very excited about that.
Please follow us on social media. You can find us at Murphy Brown Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The email is murphybrownpod.com. Our email is murphybrownpod@gmail.com.
And don't forget, subscribe to our Spotify playlist, the Murphy Brown Empowerment playlist.
If you listen to us on iTunes, please hop on and give us a quick rating and review. We'd love to hear from you, and also it helps more people find us.
Yeah, it's a free way to support the podcast.
As we're revving up to the revival, we would love to have more people on board so we can help people prep for the revival that's coming.
Yeah. Tell your friends if you haven't told anyone who you know love Murphy Brown who might want to listen to the show.
Please do. We would love to talk with more people about
we
this.
would. Yeah, so we'll see you next week.
For another edition of FYI.
The Murphy Brown Podcast. Crossdresser wants my gal. Devil worship. Exploring Satan's underground. I'm a breeder for the clan. It was a lot to absorb.